Path Media.
Being driven by and seeking external certainty well, it just puts us in a super precarious situation because, well, obviously, as I've said, nothing there's nothing externally that we can 100% control, and in fact the control is actually the illusion.
You're listening to
Path of the Jedi.
with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this stunted adventure. Stunted because, well, a few things. Number one, I am definitely in a bit of a rush. I'm going to give you the best content that I can give you, obviously. That's always my goal every week with the show. However, I am traveling right now, so there's a lot of things I have to check off my list in order to get ready for my travels tomorrow. Well, if you're listening to this, I will be or already have been in Salt Lake City. That's where I'm headed for my company's annual conference. So yeah, I feel a little bit rushed and pressed for time to get this recorded. So it may be shorter than our normal episode. Again, I will always effort and do my best to provide you guys the best content that I can. I do have a very interesting message that I want to share with you. That said, again, it might be shorter than normal. Also stunted because where we are in the show Andor, we're on episode 4. And I feel like the show has taken a very quick left turn. I personally, as a viewer, I was just getting, I was just getting settled in, right? After 3 episodes, getting settled into the characters, getting to know Andor, Cassian's situation, getting to know the planet that he's on, and just all the stuff that's going on in his life when we meet him. However, none of that is in play anymore, right? Like he's no longer on that planet where he was based off Ferrix, right? Very blue collar, working class kind of planet. We don't have the characters of Bix anymore, Marva, all the other characters that we had met and gotten to know in the first 3 episodes, and we're thrust into a completely different situation on a new planet with a whole new cast of characters. I feel like it's definitely, again, to me, very stunted. And I would like to think that it's purposeful, right? Maybe this is kind of just a peek into feeling like what Cassian's life must have been like, right? Like just to always be ready to go and pick up at the drop of a dime, a drop of a hat. Well, you know what I mean. pick things up and just be ready to move at any given moment if things go south, right? So this kind of transient nature of his life, this is something that he's probably used to. By the time we meet him on the show, on the planet Ferrix, it seems that he and Marva have already kind of been established, and they might have been there for a little while already. But this also, at the same time, this kind of moving at the drop of a hat doesn't seem foreign at all to Cassian. It seems like he's used to doing this. It's just for me as a viewer, anyways. Excuse me. Personally, it seems a little jarring, and again, it might be purposeful. I would like to think it's purposeful so that we can get a peek into what Cassian's life must have been like. So that's why I chose the word stunted, because everything just kind of changed abruptly, and from what we thought we knew, and now Cassian is again thrust into this whole new situation. When I say thrust, I mean like he was really pulled into the situation, and we're going to talk about that in today's episode as the theme. One thing real quick before we get going, though, I do want to let you guys know again, because I'm not home, you may hear some noises that you're not used to on the show. Right? I'm at my parents' in the suburbs, and obviously there's going to be different noises, different background noises here in the suburbs than there are where I live in the mountains. So you might hear some of that: cars, motorcycles, even the occasional helicopter. And then as a result, you might hear my dogs lose their minds because they're not used to noises like that, right? So just as a heads up, and I apologize ahead of time if I do happen to catch any of that on the recording. The other thing I want to let you know is that, of course, we are going to be covering Andor episode 4. So if you're not caught up yet, please go ahead and get caught up. I would hate, again, for this show, Path of the Jedi, to be the reason why anything gets spoiled for you. I hate spoilers. So I encourage you to go ahead and get caught up. I mean, I think the show itself, as of the release of today, is on episode either 6 or 7. So we're a few episodes behind, which, I kind of like that, and I generally plan that way. However, if you're not caught up with the show yet, go ahead and stop the podcast, go get caught up on Andor at least through episode 4, and then you can come back and listen to the show. Okay, awesome. I'm glad you did that. Thank you for indulging me, because again, I don't want you to. Well, I don't want to be the reason why any of this amazing show is spoiled for you, because it is so good, guys. The show is so good. It's been well received, pretty much unanimously across the board. More than the other shows have been thus far. So it's a fun ride, and I'm glad you guys are willing to do this show with me here on Path of the Jedi. This episode, I want to. Well, the thematically, I'm landing on the theme of manipulation. Dun dun dun. Yes, manipulation. Well, because I see a lot of it happening in the show. Yeah, I mean, it is very much, again, like this crime drama / spy thriller, and so naturally, I think there is a lot of manipulation that happens. I kind of want to get down to why that happens, though, right? I think it really it boils down to what we want and what drives us, and whether or not that's an internal or an external driver, right? If we look at the character of Cyril Karn, for example, I feel like Cyril is very much well. Okay, so let's before I go into Cyril Karn, because he's kind of a tragic character as of right now. let's look at Deidre Miro. Let's go there first. Deidre is an Imperial officer, right? And so. Again, played by Denise Go. She is a little bit more of a risk taker. She's definitely a go getter. She's good at her job, and she just wants to do what's right. Right. She's going after. She's chasing a lead about some stolen goods that could potentially are an indicator of a budding resistance or a budding rebellion. However, all of that is just gut instinct and gut feeling, and none of it falls into kind of the rank and file structure of the Empire. The Empire likes structure, right? Even the Pre-Mor likes structure. Bureaucracies, those are built on structure and staying in line and rank and file, because it creates predictability, predictable results, right? Systemization creates predictable results, which increase potential success. That's the whole point of systems. That's the whole point of bureaucracies and structures. I mean, we see that here on Earth, right? We see that with everything from corporate structures to religious structures to governmental structures, even to family structures, right? So structures are just kind of natural evolution of humans to ensure and improve survival. However, there are always individuals like Deidre who are more apt to take risks. Again, while structures are important to the evolution and survival of a species, risk takers are also important because it pushes the species forward in progress and advancement, right? Like without risk takers, we wouldn't know necessarily which plants are poisonous in the wild, which fuzzy animal will eat our face if we're talking about like really, really like Cro-Magnon days, right? All right, so it's a balance that we all have. I mean, even internally, right? Like our brains, I think, have the mechanisms of both these things. Some of us are apt a little bit more, lean a little bit more towards the certainty of structure, and some of us are really, we have our internal certainty, and we're willing to lean on risks because of our internal certainty, right? And Deidre's definitely one of those. She wants to take risks, and she likes to trust her gut, but that goes against what the Empire. How the Empire works, and so she's definitely she's not shut down, but she is she's definitely put in her place as a result. Again, structure and bureaucracies do not like it when people step out of line, because it screws up the predictability, it screws up the formula, right? And then therefore it screws up the potential results and success. They want to maximize results, right? um, and with risk taking and gut instincts and guesses, it decreases that potentiality. It decreases the likeliness of success, statistically anyway. So like she's not necessarily an individual I would say that would fall into being manipulated, because she kind of makes her own decisions. Her certainty doesn't rest on necessarily on the rank and file, right? On sources that are external to her, right? The certainty does that for Deidre isn't external. She has an internal certainty, which is why she's more apt and willing to take risks. Not the case for a character like Cyril Karn. His certainty doesn't seem to be within himself. He actually seems very uncertain. He seems to lack confidence. He's very unsure of himself, and so it seems to me, just from the episodes that we've seen him thus far, Cyril's certainty, he seeks certainty externally, unlike Deidre. Cyril, I think, seeks certainty from, from achievement, from his rank, from his position, from climbing the corporate ladder. Right. He seeks that level of certainty. Well, in the form of like validation through those things, right? Through achievement, through getting notoriety. He seeks that validation and approval. Unfortunately, because it's external, it's such a risky position to be. That's ultimately, I think, more risky, because you can't control any of that, right? You can't guarantee, as systematized as everything is, no matter how the bureaucracies are. The rank and file is, it's not always 100% predictable, and you can't really control, as systematized as things are, you can't control anything externally, and that is exactly what happens to Cyril. He thought like he would rely on the rank and file and the system of the guards and like the whole hierarchy there. And it all kind of blows up in his face, and so he's kicked off. He loses all that certainty. He doesn't actually achieve the thing that he wants to achieve. He achieves none of the notoriety. He doesn't get demoted. He gets fired. He's summarily removed from his position, and he has to go back home to his mother with his tail tucked between his legs. Right? Again, that is the danger of seeking that certainty externally, right? He's attached his own certainty to, in the form of approval and validation, on those external things, those achievements and those ranks and climbing up the ladder. And when he doesn't get it, well, what happens? He goes home, and the first thing his mother does when she opens the door is slap him in the face. Slaps him in the face. Okay, I don't mean to laugh, because that's not a nice situation to be in. It's clearly a very, very abusive relationship, right? And again, like it gives us so much information on Cyril and why he well, maybe not why, but as a contributing factor to why he doesn't have any external certainty, because he's in this abusive relationship, and so the danger is because his certainty that he seeks is external in things that he can't control. He can be manipulated. This is where the manipulation comes in, right? Like if your certainty that you seek is somewhere outside of you, then you can be manipulated into doing things, because you can be led to thinking that certainty will come from again, achievement, from the notoriety, from the position, from the rank. And when it doesn't, then you get slapped in the face. So it's a very, very kind of risky and dangerous position to be in when you place your certainty, or when you chase certainty outside of you, because again, we can't really control anything externally. This couldn't have been illustrated any more clearly than in 2020, when the pandemic happened, right? Like none of that any of us could control. And we were shoved into these situations where we were shoved into kind of massive uncertainty if we had placed our certainty externally. Again, we really literally cannot control anything outside of us. And so the risky thing is that, we put ourselves in precarious situations when we place too much of our certainty on external things. because overnight those things can change, right? And we see that happening with Cyril Carr. Now with Cassian, his need for external certainty is just a whole nother level, because his entire life has been a life of uncertainty, right? Right. If you look back at his history as a child, I mean, he was a young boy in a tribe of children, so all of that was just survival. Then he gets abducted by Marva. That's incredibly uncertain. He doesn't even speak the same language as Marva, which, by the way, now that I think of it, Star Wars loves loves their orphans. I got to do a whole episode on that. Anyway, sorry, that just popped in my head. So basically, like his entire life has been a life of uncertainty. So obviously, there's going to be a strong drive for well, yeah, he's going to seek external certainty all the time because he's never had it, right? It's a survival thing. He's always been in survival mode since day one, and that's what this boils down to, right? The need for certainty and the need to create structure and order out of things externally is a survival mechanism. It's an evolutionary adaptation that we all have in our minds, right? Like when we were coming down out of the trees, we were just barely standing upright. Our brains had to make sense of the world around us, had to make sense of whether this plant or fruit was edible or would poison us, whether this fluffy animal would eat our face, and so we had to create this certainty and this order externally, because that was our primary concern, was survival. Obviously, that is expressed now through the order and the bureaucracies that we create in our lives. The reality is, again, that there is no such thing as external certainty because we can't control any of that, right? And so with somebody like Cassian, when that's his primary driver, the risk then is that it can be used against him. It can be used to manipulate him. And when you have somebody that's a master deceiver, like Luthen Rael, the character played by Stellan Skarsgård, I mean, this guy is shady. He seems shady, at least to me, because he says that he knows Cassian, and he uses the information and his knowledge of Cassian to get Cassian to to participate in a rebellion that Cassian doesn't necessarily want to participate in, right? So he gets roped into this thing. He gets manipulated into the rebellion. Sure, it was for a good cause, and sure, it was, fighting the bad guys, but he still, at the base of it, I feel like Cassian is manipulated into making these decisions. And then we see Luthen Rael, he goes off to Coruscant, and he's a whole different persona. Like, he's a whole different character that he never even reveals yet, or maybe he will in the future, but it's a whole side of him that Cassian doesn't even know. So Cassian gets manipulated because, again, Luthen knows what's driving him. Luthen knows that he's driven by these the external need for certainty. He's driven by survival, and again, that's the riskiest part of this whole equation, right? Being driven by and seeking external certainty it just puts us in a super precarious situation because, well, obviously, as I've said, there's nothing externally that we can 100% control, and in fact, the control is actually the illusion. And then on top of that, we can be easily manipulated into doing things that we otherwise wouldn't do, and we see that happening all the time, every day in the modern world. That systems and individuals will use our drives and our motivations and our need for certainty against us, to manipulating us into doing things that we wouldn't otherwise do, right? So we got to really be careful. We got to really be careful of where we're placing, what we're driven by, right? Like, we got to be careful that we're not driven by a need for external certainty, because external certainty does not exist, right? It does not exist. If we use the examples in the show, Deidre, I think, is a great example to follow just in this context of our conversation today, because she, I think, even when her external certainty is shut down, the things that she was after, right? The goals and the missions that she wanted to achieve, even after those were shut down because of the bureaucratic red tape, she still maintains her own self-confidence, because instead of seeking certainty out of from the outcome, the external outcome of those missions, her internal fortitude comes from a process of growth, right? She seeks growth. She's going to learn from that situation, and again, I think she's the kind of individual, whether it's good or bad, whether the outcome is good or bad, she will continue to grow and evolve. So seek growth instead of seeking certainty, right? I think that's a much better position to be in, as opposed to Cyril Karn, where his entire identity rested on the achievement of those things. His whole notion of certainty rested on his role and his advancement in Premor, the corporation. Well, once all that was stripped away, he had nothing. He had nothing, and except a slap in the face from his mom. So again, those are great examples to follow. Be really mindful of not seeking certainty. Seek growth, because no matter what happens, whether it's good or bad, whether it's a pandemic, whether you get fired from your job, whether something happens, something is always going to happen. That's the reality, right? Understand that there is no such thing as external certainty, because change is always happening. Whether it's happening at a snail's pace or it's happening as dramatically and drastically as a global pandemic, change is always happening. And so to think that we can rely on external certainty is foolhardy, it's dangerous, it's risky, and we make ourselves susceptible to change. So do not seek external certainty. Do not seek certainty at all. Seek growth. Growth is something that you can count on, because you can learn from every situation that you get into or that happens to you, whether it's good or it's bad. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Hopefully, I was able to wrap that up and in a way that makes sense to you guys, because there is a lot of uncertainty in the world, I think, and none of it we can actually control. What we can control is how we handle it and how we deal with it. And again, if we deal with it like Deidre does, then we can learn, we can grow, and we can adapt ourselves and evolve ourselves, right? I'll go. I was about to get into a whole nother talk on evolution, but I mean, it is how we evolve, not only as individuals but as a species. Those of individuals that are able to tolerate kind of that side of things and handle and process uncertainty and grow from it are the ones that push the evolutionary process forward. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. I was feeling a little scatterbrained on this particular topic because I was trying to hone it in. It was a pretty big topic thematically, and I don't know that I necessarily had it all reined in as good as I thought I did. So yeah, well, let me know if any of this made sense. Of course, you can hit me up on Twitter and Facebook. It's POTJ Podcast for both of those things. And if you want to shoot me an email or even an MP3, you can send that over to info@pathofthejedi.com. I'd love to play that on the show. Just let me know what you think. Again, it was for me a bigger topic than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I thought I had it honed in, but I feel like it got the better of me for sure. I feel a little beat up after this recording. So let me know what you guys think. Again, it's POTJ Podcast on Facebook and Twitter, and it's info@pathofthejedi.com. Leave the title of this episode in the subject heading. Okay, so now it's time for the shout out. All right, this week's shout out goes out to a dear friend of mine in Hawaii, actually, by the name of Jason Ching. That's right, Jason Ching. Jason and his beautiful wife, Lisa, and their two kids, Jaden and Braden, who I've had the fortunate privilege of seeing grow up. I mean, I've known this guy for, 10 plus years, 13 years at this point. We've known each other for a while, and I absolutely love Jason. Like I have to admit, I'm not the greatest friend. I'm horrible at staying in touch, and I'm not necessarily the most reliable. But despite any of that, Jason has always been in my corner, been willing to, pick up the phone and answer anytime I call him or answer a text or a message when I need him. And he's just incredible. He's just incredible. Like he's been an amazing over all these years. He's been an amazing business partner for one. He's been an amazing comrade in Star Wars for two. Like we have a love for Star Wars. He shared we've shared some amazing adventures together, some hilarious times in different places around the world. We were at Star Wars Anaheim together. We were at Star Wars Orlando together one year. We've traveled all over the Caribbean, all over Mexico with his family. We've been to Jamaica together. Like, we've been to all kinds of places. So he's just one of those kind of ride or die individuals, you know what I mean? And again, he's been there for me no matter what. And I hope that I'm the same. I hope to continue to be the same, or like I'll continue to work on at the very least trying to be as good a friend as he has been to me. So Jason, I don't know if you even listen to the show, but yeah, I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate who you are, brother. So without further ado, this week's shout out goes to you. Okay, so I've actually forgotten to mention this before. I forget to mention it regularly. But if there's anybody that you want to give a shout out to, please let me know. Let me know. I would love to help you celebrate any individual or group of individuals that you feel deserve or that you just want recognized and celebrated, right? Like, I think, again, we live in a world that I don't think we celebrate each other enough. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to celebrate each other, right? So if there's anybody that you want to give a shout out to, even if it's like a birthday or just a hello, how you doing, let me know. You can send the shout out to info@pathofthejedi.com. Leave me that message, or even an MP3. That's even better if it's personalized with your voice, your MP3. Either the individual or whoever, your friend, your family, will love to hear it. Just leave shout out in the subject heading, and I'll play it on the show, or I'll read it out here on the show. Again, I think the more we celebrate each other, the happier, and we can bring more joy into each other's lives. So shoot those shout outs. Send those shout outs over to me to again, info@pathofthejedi.com, and leave shout out in the subject heading. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, I appreciate you guys' support here. Next week we're going to tackle Andor episode 5. If anything comes up, I'll let you guys know. Again, I am traveling, so it's going to be a pretty hectic and busy next 6-7 days. So if anything comes up and the next week's episode is delayed, I'll let you guys know. I don't foresee it happening, but just in case, just be aware that might happen. Otherwise, expect another episode from us. We're going to be tackling Andor episode 5, so make sure you're caught up on Andor. So until then, enjoy the show. We'll catch you next week. Be well, be safe, and may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company nor Lucasfilm Limited, and is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names and sounds and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is intellectual property of Path of the Jedi unless otherwise indicated.